Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Royal Family Astrology. Hooray! I'm joined again with my lovely hosts, Miss Kelli Glazebrook and Miss Mo Olufemi. Welcome back, ladies. It's been a while. I'm happy that you're here.
We made it.
We did make it. Thank you to everyone who's been commenting and leaving me emails and messages about when we're coming back. I feel the love. We feel the love. Sorry that we can't come back as often, but girl, it's living. We're living and doing our best. But we are back, and we're back to discuss Harry and Meghan's solar return charts. And this time we're also going to be discussing their progressions too, since we're talking about predictions. So before we get into their charts, we're going to talk about what progressions are in astrology and how we use them. And then we'll mosey on over to see what these two have coming up for the rest of the year and going into next year until their next birthdays.
Yeah, it actually works out because Meghan just had her birthday and Harry's going to have his birthday soon. So
yes. A Leo and a Virgo.
Mm-hmm. So I thought, we thought we'd do progressions, just because we've shown progress charts here before and talked about them, but we haven't really talked about what they are. And so what are they? Simply put, they're another timing tool that you use, similar to perfection, similar to solar return charts. It basically moves or progresses your chart forward in time. The most common form is what you would call a secondary progress chart, and that is a day for a year chart. So 1 day past your day of your birth is equivalent to the first year of life. 20 days past your birth is equivalent to your 20th year of life, and so on and so forth. It's a little confusing when you first hear it because you're like, wait, why are we doing that? Like, what's the point of all of that? And it's basically based on kind of like an old ancient idea. It's a symbolic chart. Plato back in his day, and yes, I dug out my Republic book. Thank you for my Greek philosophy minor, where I still have all those old Penguin classics stuck in a corner. Nice. He quoted basically saying that a day in the life of a person is similar to a year in the life of the universe. And they had a lot of math to back all this up. I'm not doing all that, but they had it figured out. That was like one of their like kind of core ideas. And then Vettius Valens later came along, and he actually applied that in 2 horoscopes in the Anthology's book, but it never became like a widespread technique in Hellenistic astrology. And it really came down to Placidus, who was an Italian monk. And he was a professor, and he's largely credited with the discovery and the use of secondary progressions. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he also came up with the Placidus house system. So a lot of people use that house system. So that's why he was a busy dude. He was doing a lot.
Interesting. Too. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So a progress chart. So what are you looking for? Like, how does it help you? And like, what are you trying to like get out of it? And here's like 4 basic like big things that astrologers would be looking for if they're looking at a progress chart. First is a sign change. So does your sun, moon, or other planet change signs? Obviously, that's going to color the way that somebody would read your chart, because now your sun is going from, maybe it's going from being an exalted sun to now it's losing some of that. Or is your sun like going, maybe it's gaining strength. So then that would be an opportunity for you to try something different. And then angles. So do the planets gain or lose closeness to the angles of the chart? So this is also known as angularity. You'll hear astrologers talk about angularity a lot, or angles. And that's what they mean, is like the ascendant, the descendant, the IC, or the midheaven. Like, do any planets become closer or further away from those angles? that would mean the planet is either gaining or losing strength or the ability to influence the person's chart. And so you'd be kind of looking for that kind of stuff. You're also looking for direction. So do the planets go direct, or is there a planet that's in retrograde? Because that will have an effect on the person's chart as well. And then also, of course, aspects. So do any progressed planets or angles make aspects to your natal chart? Then that's going to influence your life pretty significantly as well. So did I miss any, ladies? The big four.
I don't think so. That's it.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking for when we're looking at progressed charts.
I would just add the progressed lunar phase is also very, very key. That's like the one other thing you can add, especially when you get the new moons or full moons. Those are very telling.
So yeah, astrologers will kind of have different ways that they think or apply a progressed chart, but generally progressed charts are thought to show like the development of personality traits, the evolution of the soul, the unfolding of potential. So kind of like this idea that like the natal chart is kind of the promise that you're given at birth, and then the progressed chart kind of shows how you're going to be able to move through to get to that promise, like what windows of opportunity are going to be open to you, or how you're going to grow and learn and change through that to like fulfill that natal promise. And so there's the cycles of it. So progressed charts can give you insight into stages of development and the opening and closing of opportunity windows, like during lifetime. So basically saying, here's your chance to like learn this particular lesson. Are you going to learn it or not? You know, and it may come back around that you get another shot at it, but sometimes you get one. Like, hey, did I learn this lesson? You know, or not. So that's kind of what astrologers are looking at when they're looking at a progressed chart. Like, how are you developing what you were given when you got your natal chart, and how is that going to like show out?
Yeah.
And
when I'm looking at it with clients, I usually talk about it like, you know, your natal chart is somewhat static, but we're not static, right? So we're always growing and maturing. So I always talk about like your chart is growing up with you and gaining skills and moving through the houses or the signs with you. So that's one way of looking at it. And then also, like Mo was saying, with the lunar phases. So we have 8 lunar phases, which is like, you know, waxing and waning. And it's really helpful to look at that in terms of, you know, we're not always on an upswing. We're not always on a downswing. There's this kind of flow of up and down that we go through. And when you know where you are in that flow, I think it's a little bit easier to relax and not feel like you're out of sync with your life.
Yeah, it gives you like some understanding of like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be like resting right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Or I'm planting seeds right now, I'm not harvesting, you know, kind of deal, for sure. And that's kind of like based on that ancient idea too. Like think about like the first 90 days of like from the time you're born until you're like 3 months old. You go through a lot of development in those like first 3 months. There's a lot going on. And that's what that progress chart is kind of showing, you know, that first day is like the first year of your life. And so you're like, hopefully like learning and growing and developing and like taking in a lot of information and like applying it as you move through those like first 90 days. But yeah, here's where I sort of put the moon phase into. But so when you're casting a progress chart, you can see like times of change, windows of opportunity, new opportunities, as well as endings, closures, things that are, you know, you can put to bed. And the moon phase is very important too. So full moon would signal culmination, while a new moon would be planting seeds to harvest later, like Janelle and Mel were saying. Like that's very important. So yeah, looking at it, even if you just looked at like moon progressions, honestly, that would tell you a lot. Like you could get a lot of information just from that. So for sure.
It's going to come in handy when we look at some progress charts later.
But yeah, I thought, let's look at Barack Obama's chart. On the left is Barack Obama's birth chart.
Mhm.
And then on the right is the chart at the day that he was elected president.
Got it. So let's talk about, there's a couple of things I saw in this chart between his natal and his progress chart. And this is for when he won the first election.
The
right?
first, yes.
So one thing that we didn't really talk about is how fast the planets can progress. Typically, the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, they're usually moving about 1 degree per year with you, unless somebody's retrograding or stationing or doing something like that. The outer planets move pretty slowly in the sky, so they're not going to progress that far at all during a lifetime. But the fastest moving body is going to be the moon. Instead of moving 1 degree per year, she's moving 1 degree per month. So she's kind of trucking.
Speedy.
She's speedy.
Very fast.
So she's moving through each of these houses, what, every 2.5 years, give or take?
Yeah, just about.
So because of that, she becomes a timepiece in relation to the sun. So this is how we determine the phase of the lunar cycle that somebody's in, right? So when Barack was born, he was born with the moon waning towards the sun. So what is that, like a last quarter moon?
Last quarter-ish, yeah.
Right? So that's different for what's going on at the time of the election, because he's actually heading into a full moon cycle. So the energy is rising with him. He's gaining power. He's gaining light, right? So this is a big culmination event in his life, gaining this presidency. It's a little bit early, though, I would say.
It's a little early.
A little early.
But it's also interesting to note that the moon would have been in the 10th house while he was campaigning. So he'd have been very visible to everybody during that time. Yeah.
Wait, so something that I also noticed is that he just had the progressed moon change signs, and that moved into his first house. So that's kind of a big deal, I think.
For sure.
So yeah, so that's crossing his natal, first house.
So I think with the moon in the first house, you're kind of seen as like a nurturer or a caretaker, and sign of Aquarius, taking care of the country. The US is an Aquarius moon country too. So there's definitely some, people were
Affinity.
like, yeah, affinity, right? It was a very good night. The other thing too that I think is pretty interesting was that Saturn, his MC was now in Capricorn. Right? And Saturn is also there with Jupiter. So again, taking on all this responsibility, right? It's a Saturn in domicile, so it's a strong Saturn. He's now a Virgo sun. I'm going to be of service. I'm going to take care of you people.
Yeah.
Right. So these are just a couple of things that we would be looking at in someone's progress chart if we were talking about what was coming up. Right. If you're on the upswing, a lot of responsibilities coming your way. And then we'd also put the two charts together and talk about how they're interfacing with one another.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that Jupiter is going to go direct within like the first, I think the first third, after about 3 years into his presidency, which I think helps him win his reelection a lot. A lot. And Saturn kind of also goes direct and then goes back retrograde right as he's closing out his presidency. So it's kind of like he almost got a window of time, and that's kind of like what we were talking about with the progress charts, like helping you identify those like years that you have to like have a shot at something. And like this was kind of like his time, right? Like Jupiter opened the door for like things to happen, and then on his way out, essentially Saturn slammed the door shut and was like, well, that was it. Hope you got what you needed to get done. And also, interestingly enough, it was Saturn's doing this in the house, his 12th house, which is the house of enemies. And like, who's the person that came in at the end of his presidency? It was Trump. Like his, not only his like political rival, but like kind of more of a personal one, because Trump was the one that started this birtherism movement and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, it kind of tells like a whole story, right? Of like the opening of the door, the slamming of the door shut, the opportunity that he had for like this moment in time to like do what he needed to get done.
So interesting. That'd be a really fun chart to like break down a little bit more, especially now that we know what's happened in terms of progressions and transit, all that kind of fun stuff. But I'd love to see what the progressions look like for the second election too. But
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah. But yeah, and then you can put them on top of each other and do a bi-wheel to basically look and see like, oh, okay, what planets are interacting and how do they interact with the natal. So that's also something that's, that's important too, is to see how that's going to impact the natal chart as well. But it's actually pretty good because he did get that progressed sun into that trine with the progressed moon and the natal Jupiter. I think that's what allowed him to get anything done.
Yeah. Like a lot.
That's like almost like feels like providential almost in a way. Like, when you get that sun, Jupiter, moon thing going, kind of feels that way.
So much in there. Such a fun chart.
And then you get the progressed Mars squaring the natal Saturn, which is all of the roadblocks that he ran into, I think.
Sure, especially when it came to passing anything.
Yeah, like that is not a fun aspect.
You know what? I also feel like that describes him like winning, like the circumstances under which he won the presidency. So he's inheriting a lot of debt from the outgoing president and like, an unpopular war, right? So yeah, that being very indicative of the circumstances under which he was winning. It's like, okay, you've got this mandate to unscrew up the country as a result of, financial stuff and war related stuff. So yeah.
I think that Mars also speaks a lot to the type of war that he preferred, which was the drone, like his like huge expansion of the drone program.
I think it's pretty interesting too with the ascendant in the third house. I think one of the things he's known for most is like his speaking style, right? He's a great orator. Their social media policy and how they kind of came across, like very, very savvy. I think also that Neptune in the 10th, right? So in hindsight, I'm sure there are things that we see a little bit clearer, but at the time, I think there was a lot of Hollywood, a little bit of sparkle, right? It was the second coming of Camelot to some people because they were so good at messaging. And I think that kind of plays into that Mars and Libra. It's very smooth, very well put together and, harmonious, that kind of stuff. So.
And very powerful, like kind of almost steamroll you sometimes.
And you kind of wanted it after so many years of Bush. You're like, whatever you want. Like, we just like that you're like charming and know how to speak and seems to know what you're doing and whatever you want to do, we're kind of here for it. But, behind the scenes, not everything is what it seems, which is very Neptunian, I think.
Definitely.
I think that Jupiter story is like so interesting when you think about like his campaign of like hope, because like it's such a good like metaphor for like Jupiter at times of like the hopes and wishes and dreams that you bring in, and we were just ready for it,
So ready for it. And that was the theme of the campaign, right? Because the sixth house is Cancer, ruled by that progressed moon in Aquarius, right? Coming to that Jupiter, who's in charge of the 11th house and the second house, right? We were all about it. We were like, those are our values. That's what the collective wants. Give it to us. Serve us this way.
Yeah.
And, he did his best, but here we are.
Yeah.
It definitely radicalized some people too, which is very Aquarian.
But yeah, hopefully that kind of gives like a little bit of an example of like what it's like as like to read a progressed chart and like kind of the things that it can show you. So yeah. And if anyone's interested, those are the references that I was pulling from. I was like, I don't know, do y'all have anything that you like better? But those are the ones that I had in my bookshelf close to me.
I think the Eagle and the Lark I'll put back in, and I'll try my best to put some links to these books for you guys in the little section below the video, so you can take a peek. But yeah, astrology is a lot of reading. and researching
Yes, a lot.
a lot.
As I sit next to 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right?
5, 6, 7, 8,
This
9,
bookshelf
10
and in my
books.
bedroom. Mhm.
But I did try to throw in a podcast for those of for people who don't like to read as much, but it's a pretty dense podcast. It's almost like reading anyway. And then there's us, if you want to
Find
follow us.
Yeah.
And I think you put the links in there too, but just in case.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then we can look at Meghan and Harry.
Okay.
All right, so let me share my screen. There we go. And so Meghan just had her birthday, but I guess we can start with Harry. Because why not?
Why not?
Why not?
He's getting close, right?
Right. All right. So Harry was born September 15th, 1984 at 4:20 p.m. in London, UK. And as I think you guys know by now, we cast the solar return chart for the minute the sun gets back to the position that it was at the time of his birth. So Harry was born with the sun at 22 Virgo. Oops, sorry guys. 22 Virgo and like 56 minutes here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at his solar return chart, we're going to be looking at that sun. But before we get to that, let's do the usual. How old is Harry turning this year?
39.
39. And 39 is a what?
Fourth
A
house.
fourth house
Fourth
year?
year.
Fourth house year for Harry.
Mhm.
So fourth house years has a lot to do with what? Family, with home, with property, what else? Lineage, ancestry,
Your legacy, your foundation, life.
legacy, right? So Harry has Aries on the cusp of his fourth house. Aries is ruled by Mars. So Mars is his lord of the year going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then just looking within his own natal chart, we want to know what's going on with Mars. The state of his Mars is a good Mars. Who's Mars talking to? That kind of stuff, right? So Mars is in the 12th house.
This is going to be a difficult year for Harry, I think. A couple reasons for that. So there's that concept called sect. So there are planets that play for the day team. So that would be the Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter together. And then you've got planets that play for the night team. So the Moon, Venus, and Mars. And you can clearly see that Harry is a day chart since his sun is above the horizon. So that means that he's on the team where
it don't get much more day than that.
It doesn't get much more, especially with that sun in Joy. So I mean, he's very diurnal, and Mars is not really the nicest for the daytime people. So I do think that this is going to be a more challenging year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why is it Mars happy in a day chart?
So the idea is that the malefics behave better in the sect that, tempers their qualities. The daytime is a little too hot for Mars, and Mars is already in tempered heat. And, the diurnal is very more self-focused rather than others focused generally. And that's a very selfish Mars, so there could be more argumentativeness, more division. And another thing is that the diurnal sect is trying to bring about cohesion and assimilation into this one thing, this one endless thing. Mars is a planet of division, right? It doesn't want to be a part of one thing. It wants to split things apart. So that's also another reason why Mars does not do well in day charts. So
and amplified by being in a double-bodied sign.
And a fire sign as well. Sagittarius. It's also with Uranus, but I think this definitely talks about some of Harry's story to an extent, right? Because if we think about the family dynamic with him, even before all this stuff has happened, he's always kind of wanted to split away from his family, right?
Yeah.
And to the point where he enjoyed being abroad, being at war, versus being back home. Right. So Mars and Sagittarius, right? I'd rather be far away, 12th house, distant lands. I'd rather be elsewhere in
Yes.
chaotic Uranian situations than here with you.
Then deal with y'all.
No,
Than deal with y'all.
you guys know what's even better. So Mars is actually in a decan that it co-rules. So Mars has its like hidden superpower, right? And a lot of the narratives of that middle 10 degrees of Sagittarius do center around, protecting things that are of value, right? So it makes sense that he enjoyed being like a warrior or championing causes. I think it both speaks to his charity work as well as his military career. So I think that you'll probably see him doing a lot more of that in favor of,
Well, now he has a family to do that for.
yeah.
So it's another way he can express it.
Yeah.
And also, too, we can say that his family now is living abroad in a different country, right? And
so
it came about
he may
pretty
be
suddenly.
he may be remediating this in some
I
way.
think he is.
Right.
It's funny because also that Mars, I find that people have placements there. So his mother has her ascendant there. Other people like I think Liz Taylor and Kim Kardashian also have their ascendants in that middle decan of Sagittarius. And there's like a sort of weird like charm or glamour. Like some of the symbolism does have to do with like a woman who's like literally holding treasure, sitting on top of a lot of treasure. So it seems like there's going to be an opportunity for Harry to maybe cash in a little bit on being separate from the family. Even better that Mars rules the 11th house in midheaven, right? Speaking to his personal experience of life purpose, as well as like the potential to gain through collaborators or, media, because the 11th house is also a house of gains. So it just seems like reinforcing what I said, I think on the William episode that we did, like, I don't see them reconciling. I didn't even take a look at his Mars and what it was doing, but just looking at it, like, I think the rift is probably going to get a lot bigger, in my opinion, just looking at this.
Well, I think we do know that the next Invictus Games happen either right around his birthday, possibly, or right after, or somewhere in there. So,
Somewhere in there,
again, bringing in that military, where people have been wounded, helping them transform, helping them heal, the games, that kind of stuff is coming back into the fore around his birthday. So that would be cool to see. Harry's Mars, speaks to Uranus and Neptune. He's not really talking to Jupiter next door or Saturn, but he does get support from Venus.
Yeah.
Pretty tightly.
Yeah, that's great for, again, like professional career stuff, reinforcing a lot of what we were saying, like by taking these ventures, to support military folks via Invictus and, packing it up and leaving the family.
And isn't it called the Warrior Games? And doesn't Venus rule his fifth?
Yes.
Games.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Mars is also talking to the sun as well. It's squaring. So, 8th house is to do with, it rules the 8th house, right? Speaking to inheritance, legacies, and other things. This is another reason why I really do think that if it's not this year, maybe like sometime next year, like before he switches, I just see like some shift with respect to titles, inheritance, something. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's just like, I'm over this whole experience, right?
Rightly so, right? Because it's been, since they've left, 3 years ago now, I guess, it's been relentless. Every day the press is making up some story about these two. Why, we don't know. Well, we do, but apparently you can't leave. You can't leave the cult. If you do, we're just going to, harangue, harass. We know that this past couple months ago, they had a car chase situation in New York City. So we'll talk about that too, because people are like, well, what should they do for media? And how come they're not communicating? Because girl, they're being stalked still.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit
dangerous.
I do think that Sun Mars aspect might be good though, to give him strength for the court case.
Yes, I think so too.
He's not going to give up on that, and he will do whatever it takes to like make it happen. for sure.
Definitely. You know what else? So you can also do perfections from the sectilight, and so the sun will also move 4 signs away from its original position. And guess what's activated? That 12th house.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. So since Harry is a day chart, his sun is the sect ruler, right? For the
Mhm.
sect light. And so counting, since he's in the 4th house year, we count 4 houses away from this house. So
From the
1,
sect,
2, 3, 4. So we're back into the 12th house.
Mhm.
Right? So it's kind of a doubling effect. And so does Jupiter also come in because Sagittarius is on the
Yes.
cusp? So now
Mhm.
Jupiter is also in play. So technically Mars and Jupiter are kind of running the show a little bit this year.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Jupiter because he's also got Jupiter in its own decan and Capricorn. Great year to start new like charitable ventures, I think, if that's something that he really wants to do, since the 12th house also does have those charitable connotations. Jupiter does rule the house of siblings, extended family. So I do wonder if again there's going to be some like reckoning resolution with that, but perhaps something that is able to like liberate him from these things, right? Because Jupiter is a planet of liberation, and it will free you from the chains that you impose on yourself, and that can be very stressful.
But I do like the sun coming in and disinfecting that 12th house.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
I think we will learn a lot about stuff that was hidden before through this court case, maybe through Harry himself, maybe through another book or something of that nature, because that sun's coming in there and disinfecting that whole house of horrors that Harry's got.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I do think that, because Jupiter is also the most positive planet for Harry since he's a day chart. I do think that this is going to be a year of like polar extremes where he's experiencing, yes, some of the worst stuff, especially as it relates to maybe cleaning out the old family trauma and family patterns that might be holding him back, while also getting to experience, maybe a newfound freedom, especially through his charitable work. I think we're going to see a lot more of Harry doing charitable work this year for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see what the solar return chart says. Okay, so solar return chart, we have Mars is in Libra this year. It's a little bit of a downgrade. Mars doesn't love to be in Libra, but we'll see what we can do. Give me a second here.
In the sibling house. So
yeah,
I don't see the sibling thing letting up this year.
There's no, if anything, this is giving like severe sibling conflict, right?
Yeah, and we'll probably see that doubling up again when we put the two charts together, but I'm wondering if that Mars sits on any of William's Libra planets. I'm not too sure.
I think so. Yeah, I think William has that might actually be sitting really close to William's Mars, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow.
It's like his Mars return.
All right. So Mars is with the moon in Libra. Great. We have the North Node next to the MC in the 9th house. All right. So there could be some more traveling to fight. Maybe some more legal related stuff too, especially since Mars is in Libra. So seeking justice and harmony and balance, hopefully rectifying the scales.
Yeah.
He has Venus rising. That should be nice.
Okay. Yeah. William's Mars is at 9 of Libra and his Saturn is at 15 of Libra.
There we go. Right
So
between.
right in between.
Right between.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, no, that the first thing I do notice is that Mars in Libra. So it's ironic because he's got the moon in Joy in the 3rd house. And I find that planets that are in their joy, they have these like ability to give gifts, as Dr. Lomi says on one of his various demos. If you don't subscribe to his Patreon, where he talks about, the different forms of techniques you can use within Islamic medieval astrology, it's wonderful. It's a treasure trove of stuff. But when I see planets enjoy, like the moon, especially the luminaries, I mean, Harry has like the sun and joy in his chart, so he becomes this symbol of something important, right? Because the sun does embody that. But with the moon, I find that if you don't have someone who is, I guess, president of this or like head of this council and most popular something, or head of a team, right? There's something about being familiar with people and being recognizable to people that's nice. Yes, the moon does rule the 12th, so there can be like a contentious relationship with that. The moon is in its own decan, however, and I find that this part of Libra can speak to the capacity to recognize, a balance or inequality. And since the moon does address like dealing with people's needs, and the 12th house can have to do with charity, I can see again like another signature for heading up a charity or being involved with like a major charity in a major way. But then seeing that Mars in the third and knowing what we know about the sibling relationships as well, I'm wondering if there's tension there. Oh, you know what I just thought of? Because Mars rules the 4th house in this chart. You know how he and William are doing, they both run the charity in honor of their late mother. I'm wondering if like there might be a need to like maybe not end the charity, but like there might be like a need to split with each other in terms of like who's responsible for it or not. Does that make sense? Like I hope I'm making sense.
But I'm also wondering if there might be stuff that comes up around the other charity things they've worked on in the past, like Heads Together, or especially with the whole court case going on. I don't know what could come out through there, but it's possible.
Well, Mars rules the 9th as well, so that does tie in court, law, legal stuff. All of that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a troublesome, like it's not a harmonious year.
No.
You can have like good things come out of it, and that may be the gift of the moon, but it'll come at a cost. And I think the cost is his relationships with his sibling, unfortunately.
I mean, but hey, Venus is in the first, like squaring Jupiter. We love it. Like I think that we've heard a lot of rumors lately about them doing more media projects, and this does speak to that with Venus ruling the 10th and the 3rd, and being like a planet of the arts. So I think that Harry doing a lot more like media projects, and because Venus is in a fire sign, I would expect them to be more visual than not. I think that could be something we see.
And Jupiter ruling the 5th as well.
Exactly. Yes. 100%.
In a fire sign.
Yes.
That'll give a lot of energy to new projects.
Yeah. And then also with that North Node too, in that 9th house, television, radio, film, broadcasting, podcasting, promoting, traveling, maybe another book, especially with all this 3rd house energy coming through.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember when the second book's supposed to come out. I haven't heard.
No idea.
I don't know yet.
But I think Spare is still doing really well in terms of sales at this point. I think it's dropped maybe here and there, but overall, probably
it's been out for a while,
for months, but it's still, it's like, I don't know if it's broken any records or not, or what have you, but it's definitely still on the bestsellers list at this point in time, for sure. All right.
Maybe the South Node too in that 3rd house will clean out some of that old stuff with the brothers.
Remember what I said about Mars and the South Node? Like they're literally, it's like having Mars squared, like really purging, 100%.
I mean, Saturn's also in the 8th house this year in this solar return chart, so there can be some heaviness. issues around intimacy and closeness with people. That 8th house is his natal 3rd house too. So Saturn is in the house of siblings when we get to his, when we put the 2 charts together. So, you know, if he has to go back to therapy just to talk about the issues that he has with his sibling, it's possible. Mercury stationing in this chart. Anything coming up with, where's his other Gemini house?
And Mercury's returning almost to the degree in his chart. So I think that's going to be huge for projects that he's doing, since Mercury does rule like the 9th and the 6th. So again, I do think that more writing, more publishing type stuff definitely in the works. And I think that because Mercury rules the 2nd and 11th and is exalted in its own sign and literally in its one of its own decans, it's like it's a great year for Harry monetarily, I think, for sure. Yeah.
All right, let's take a peek at the 2 charts together. Right, so in this chart we have the inside wheel is his natal chart, and the outside is the solar return chart that we were just looking at.
Yeah.
So here's Mars, Lord of the Year, inside of his 10th house, right?
Leave her alone.
Guys, I just keep looking at this and it's really just screaming at me. Like, he is not, the titles are going away. Like, he doesn't want it. He's over it. Like, he's focused on his new private life. Like, I think, you know, especially because, you know, you've got the planet of severing and separating Mars, and then you've got the South Node, which is like a planet that really wants us to purge like things that are unnecessary, right? I really do think that there's a lot of cleaning up happening on that aisle. So
I think also with the North Node falling into his 4th house is like, you know, and it's an Aries, so starting a new beginning around family. Right. And also the midheaven here too. It's just like, this is the new way that I want to be seen. This is kind of the new title for myself, is it's just Harry, or whatever he's going to choose to call himself as if he drops the titles.
I don't know.
And then the ruler of the 10th house, Venus, is in the 8th, you know, so there's kind of like that idea of like, when you walk into the 8th house, you leave differently. You kind of get purged and things burn away, and you go into the underworld and you come out as somebody else.
I mean, look at that ascendant falling in the 8th. Like, I think that there's going to be a lot of questions around inheritance, legacies, and things. And I just feel like he's going to decide that some of that stuff is just not worth it, right? So, yeah.
Interesting. So here's Saturn in the 3rd house. So this is the sibling stuff that we were just talking about. But also Uranus is sitting on his moon.
On his moon.
Right. And the moon rules over the 7th house. So definitely some shakeups to relationships, business contracts. Something else was coming up around that. Uranus, I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious that people keep speculating that he and Meghan are divorced, when in reality I've seen some more pap shots of the 2 of them this summer than I have in the last 3 years. Like, it's really comical. I do think that does speak to some changes going on in Meghan's life. Maybe she's feeling the need to like reform her image, maybe reforming her needs, things of that nature.
Yeah. Anything else about this chart?
No.
It'll be interesting if he does like give up the titles. It's interesting to see Venus in that house as well, as like maybe offering something in exchange for it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And I think it will affect his kids as well, since, you know, Venus rules children in his chart.
And then what
direction.
about the state of Jupiter in this chart, since Jupiter's kind of running some stuff with Mars this year to a lesser extent,
Mm.
and is making it in conjunct with his natal Mars?
Yeah. I do think that there's like more of an expansion of some of his like creative projects. This is like a reiteration of that. I think also as well, maybe some things tying to children, especially maybe related to like the connections his children has with his extended family, or like maybe they're like immigration status as well, right? At least for Archie, because he was born in the UK. Maybe something related to that.
There's kind of a loose finger of God, or Yod, very loose, between his natal Mars and Venus to that Jupiter.
That's pretty tight, in my opinion, because like, yeah, it's like 2 degrees off from the Venus, but it's pretty close. That's a yod, definitely.
So behind the scenes, public stuff heading into the 5th. Well, like you said, Mel, possibly the titles, because I would think there's like behind the scenes negotiations happening in regards to what they might get.
Yeah.
And how that influences the family. And I'd even pull in Meghan to that too, obviously, because she's right next door.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And we can't forget that Chiron is pretty close and next to the MC here. So there could be some wounding coming up, some painful stuff. For sure. All right. Do we want to look at his progress chart?
Look at his progressions.
All right, let's see, do I have that? Yes, I do. Okay, so what we spoke about earlier in terms of lunar cycles, you're going to see Harry's
Why
pretty
aren't we
queer.
seeing Harry right now? Oh, I wonder why.
Because he's in a new moon phase. So Harry has literally just had a new moon maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of days ago at this point.
But in Secret of Scorpio?
In Secret of Scorpio with Pluto, right? So this
Are we surprised? No.
Change and transformation happening in Harry's life. This is a brand new beginning, a brand new chapter, planting new seeds for himself. So I would think after all the hoopla that's happened with moving away and releasing a book and doing a documentary and doing all this stuff, he's like, and we're starting fresh.
Yeah, and
burning off all this shit.
This new moon is intense because it's like the moon near its maximum fall. Like it's really like a rough new beginning. And the progressed moon in Scorpio is not a phase to joke around with. That and the one in Capricorn, because there's a lot of emotional like purging
turmoil
you go through. Yeah.
And
Pluto doesn't help.
No, Pluto's not helping.
No.
I could probably very quickly show how this is going to move, but like we said earlier, the moon is moving a degree per month. So she's moving through all these planets in the next, 15, 16 months, roughly. Yeah. And then she's going to get to the South Node. So I would say for the next, 2.5 years, Harry's life is going to go through a lot of changes, possible extremes, ups and downs, challenges, because she has to get through Pluto. She has a little break with Mercury, then she has to get through Saturn, then she has to get to the North Node, and then she gets to Venus. Right?
Venus.
Yeah.
And then that's still his 12th house natally. Right?
Yeah.
Then she has to get through all this, and then she has to get, then if she gets to Jupiter, so I wouldn't say until maybe the moon gets to Capricorn, and then it's in fucking Capricorn. So
yeah.
So I would say that the next couple of years of Harry's life are going to be interesting for him.
Turbulent.
Yeah.
Quite turbulent.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever image he's presenting up front, no behind the scenes, most likely.
Going through it.
He's going through it. Right. So when clients come to us with this, we're like, oh, okay. So let's talk about.
Sorry, baby.
Right?
I'm so sorry.
Let's talk about mitigation factors that we can help you with. to help you as well, therapy and like, talking about your feelings. The good thing though is that in Harry's chart, I believe he is also already a Moon Saturn person. It's kind of loose, but it's there.
Yes, he's a Moon Saturn.
He's a Moon Saturn person. And if you just want to do by sign opposition, you can say Moon Pluto too. So he's not new to this, right? But this is a doubling up. This is maybe a reigniting stuff for him, possibly, right? And I was looking at this earlier. I think it's really interesting that his Moon and Saturn, they're about 9 degrees apart, give or take?
Yeah.
And isn't that around the time that his parents split up?
Yeah, something like that.
Because they split up, 95, was it, Kelly? Or divorced or separated, right?
Yeah, I think they announced the separation, yeah.
No, I thought they separated in 92, but the divorce was final in
95. Okay.
95. Okay, so I think that's interesting.
He was about 9.
Around 9 years old, that's showing up in his chart as well, right? So I'm wondering if this moon is going to bring back some of these stories, especially around his father and mother and what happened the last time. So yeah, anything else about his progress chart?
It's just so bunched up in the 9th and 10th right now. It's like, whew, a lot of this stuff's going to be visible. Very visible.
I think it's interesting that, right, William is represented by Jupiter, correct? Well, here's Jupiter, Mars again.
No matter how you slice it,
no matter how you
slice it, dice it, do this, juggle.
Here are these two fighting, but thankfully Mars is moving away from Jupiter.
Yeah.
And when I looked, I believe this was more exact in 2013. So I would love to know what was happening in 2013 between those two, because that would have been when the two were the tightest together. If they were working together or starting to fight, I'm not sure. But yeah. And also the midheaven, the ascendant is in his natal 3rd house again. So it's a lot, but yeah, so you can see Harry is now starting a brand new beginning, and it's a little bit rough. Right.
But that 9th house definitely does speak to a lot of the stuff he's going to be doing. Legal stuff overseas, which he's going to be doing the Invictus Games, some other charity stuff overseas. He just was in Singapore, right, doing his charity match for polo and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely speaking to the fact that he's going to be very busy in those houses. And then the 10th house, obviously, working.
I'm curious about that Neptune, figuring out his direction.
I think it's a little razzle dazzle too, maybe.
The image of it, but also losing something else is dissolving. So yeah.
Well, you can bring Venus back into it since it's the 8th house. Talking about Venus is in the 10th is like Mo was talking about, like that loss of title or standing, something like that.
Ooh, fun. It's a lot going on. Anything else about his progress chart? I think we very briefly look at everybody together. So this is just kind of tri-wheel now. So Harry's chart, natal chart, is on the center wheel. The middle wheel is the progress chart that we were just looking at, and the outside wheel is what's happening in the sky right now. Right, so that new moon is happening inside of his 11th house, which is interesting, a brand new set of hopes and wishes for the future for himself.
Yeah, and like alliances with people as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wish him luck.
Me too.
I wouldn't want to be going through this right now with everybody looking at you, but this is Harry's entire life, right?
Mhm.
always in the spotlight, whether he likes it or not.
Mhm.
All right, moving on to Miss Meghan.
Yes,
Okay.
Meghan.
All right, let's go to Miss Meghan. Here we go. All right, so Meghan was born August 4th, 1981 at 4:46 a.m. in Canoga Park, California. Miss Meghan is perhaps turned 42 years old this year.
Mhm.
She is.
All right, so 42 is a 7th house year. So Capricorn is on this cusp. That means Saturn is the Lord of Meghan's year. Isn't it interesting how both of them have malefics as their lords this year?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
actually hilarious. That's very, very hilarious.
Mhm. So,
Wow. Okay, yeah, because Megan from the sect light, because when you're in a 7th house year, everything perfects to the opposite sign. So she's got the moon in Libra. So
mhm.
that perfects to Aries. And then technically you can perfect from the other luminary, but it's hilarious because she's got Leo sun and that would also activate Saturn. So this is a difficult year for Megan as well,
Mhm,
I think.
mhm, mhm. Well, I think we know quite a bit about Meghan's Saturn at this point in time, right? Um, it's in the 4th house, right? So
Mhm.
definitely challenges around family. I would definitely say around the father's side of the family, and probably the family that came in through the marriage partner.
Marriage, yeah.
Mhm,
Sadly, yeah, her dad is, and her dad's side is gonna be up to shenanigans this year. Again.
mhm, mhm.
Again.
So
Yeah.
interesting. Not that I forget, but for some reason it doesn't always hit me that Meghan is a moon Saturn, even more so than Harry.
Oh wow, I just noticed that. I always forget that she's a moon Saturn. Like,
Mhm.
you're right.
So
That's a good
moon
point.
Saturn can be kind of difficult emotionally and just dealing with, and we can see why. Like what does it feel like to have your father publicly kind of disown you and betray you, right? And to have your husband's family kind of attacking you. And everyone having all these opinions about you, right? And
Yeah.
Meghan is the moon, right? Because since she is a Cancer rising, she is this moon in this chart, more or less, right? So there's a certain heaviness. Yes, she's very hardworking and successful, but there's a cost
Yeah.
emotionally for
So,
her.
this is fascinating to me because you know how I was like, oh yeah, I think Harry's like getting rid of the fucking titles, right? I mean, for the fact that she's got both malefics activated, Mars is squaring the Saturn and the moon.
Mhm.
I do wonder if this is going to be a decision that they deliberate on together, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Because they can't deal with the stress and it's preventing them from working on things that they want to work on, right?
Mhm.
It
It's
seems
a
like,
bigger burden than help
yeah.
at this point. And,
Yeah.
the Mars is also ruling the 10th. So,
mhm,
You
mhm,
know what? I think that it kind of speaks to this desire that Megan might have to get back in not necessarily like acting, but like in that creative space professionally. I think that this is something that she might be really focused on doing. Mars is also in its own decan of Cancer. So, and it's near the fixed star Sirius, which does have a lot of artistic quality.
mhm,
I think that the middle part of Cancer describes those scenarios where you're kind of like in that safe, secure garden, right? Where you're creating your most precious ideas, right? And if that's something that's really important to Megan this year, I do think that it's going to be hard to do that if you have the weight of these titles like crushing, right? And keeping you from speaking on the things that you want to speak on or creating the things you want to create because you have to worry about sort of the optics of, oh, a royal has these opinions, right? So I don't know.
mhm,
also, like, especially with like Charles being king now, I'm not sure royalty has the same cachet as it once did.
Yeah.
So it may not be worth it
Um,
anymore.
Yeah. And I think we spoke a little bit about William in the press, and I believe Charles and Camilla as well in their solar return chart readings.
Mhm.
And lately there's been quite a few members of the press who were pretty active in bullying them while they were in the country, even when they were out of the country, who have recently been caught up in scandal.
Mhm.
Right. So
Yes.
Piers Morgan, there was another one, Hugh Edwards, I think it is. I can't
Yeah.
remember. And also most recently Dan Wooten, who was probably the worst of the set
Yeah.
in bullying them. And it's possible that some of those media members might have connections to the royal family, which would not be surprising because we do know that those people have had lunches and dinners and parties with the royals, right?
Mhm.
So there's definitely some weird stuff happening, right? So I guess we'll see. It may not be cool to be associated with people who have these kind of connections.
Yeah. Yeah. I also do wonder if some of those rumors about the Sussexes moving are true, because it seems like there's a lot of agitation towards Meghan's fourth house.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if like relocating or purchasing more property might become something that also comes online for the two of them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Saturn in this chart is definitely accompanied by the moon, Jupiter, and Pluto, right?
Mhm.
No real help from Venus next door. Mars sends a square, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Anything else? The sun kind of helps by sextile. So does Mercury, especially pretty tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, this is a pretty heavy
That's a really
seventh
weird.
house via the Saturn in the fourth.
Mhm.
We've kind of seen how that comes about. So also, I would think seventh house possible more legal stuff too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about from her sister or her father, but that's a possibility.
Mhm.
I don't know what else could possibly crop up, but it is definitely family related, and we know that her family, especially on her dad's side, is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's also bringing in the eighth house, since Saturn was the eighth and the south
Mm.
node is there. So
Yeah.
that is also, again, speaking to a loss of, a partner's maybe titles or partner's
Partners' assets.
inheritance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit early, but I wonder if there's going to be any more transitions too with her business contracts.
Mhm.
I know they left Spotify. I
Yeah.
think she joined up with a different representative
Yeah.
Talent, yeah.
talent agency.
Mhm.
So we don't know what's coming up next in terms of projects. Oh, we did hear about possibly them buying the rights to a novel
Yeah.
to do a
Book.
movie.
A novel to make a movie. Yeah.
Mhm. So, there are a couple things up in the air, and we'll see more as we get into our chart. But yeah.
I think that kind of ties in nicely with the fact that she's got that Saturn, Jupiter, and then Mars is aggravating it since it's active, and like, purchasing the rights to a creative work so that you can
Mhm.
make something. I
Mhm.
think one of the challenges for her might be like, just because, Saturn, Mars aspects are very, what did Austin Coppock say? Relentless. So like, yeah, there's a lot of stopping and starting, but they eventually get done because Mars has that tenacity to push through, but Saturn has like the, sort of obligation that it feels, even if it's like saying to take a pause or to stop something so that you're doing it correctly. It's like there's this consistent persistence, I think, that you might see with some of her stuff that she wants to get off the ground. And I think it's going to be a lot more creative as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about that in Barack Obama's chart. He had that for a lot of his presidency, the Mars Saturn square. And it was like that relentless push to like get anything passed for like the ACA, right? For healthcare. It was a lot of blocks. There was a lot of obstacles, but it was like, it was do or die, and he was going to get it done.
Sure. Okay. Let's go on to her solar return chart. So here's the return chart. Saturn is in Pisces this year. So what I learned about between the solar return chart and the natal chart, if the two Saturns can talk to each other, determines whether or not the year goes smoothly or not. So if Saturn can see itself, it's like we can talk, we can plan, we can kind of get a landscape kind of going on. If they don't see each other, there can be delays, there can be, blockages. Things don't go exactly to plan, right? So Libra to Pisces, we're not seeing each other this year. So again, kind of the idea that there will be delays going on this year. And I think we see that again doubling up with a Mars-Saturn opposition
Yeah.
in this chart. Right? Doesn't mean that there won't be work done, but maybe it won't be released the way that she wants it to be done this year. It might take a little extra time for whatever
Take
reason.
longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you don't see her out and about or see the project, just know there's work being done. It's just
Exactly.
taking a lot longer than she thought it would.
Yeah. And I think this is like a lot of creative work as well, because just seeing that Saturn's in its own decan in Pisces, like I think that for a lot of us, we're really reevaluating, okay, what are these things we've committed to or bound ourselves to by obligation, and are they worth it? And I think that, maybe she's like finding a new sort of medium of art or creative pursuit that she really wants to be a part of and invest in. And I think that Saturn also being retrograde as well, speaking to some of the revision of the contract she has to get those things going, for sure.
Maybe she'll be more vocal this year with Mercury and Mars in the first house. And it's interesting that Mercury is conjunct Harry's solar return Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
At 8 degrees.
Oh, yeah,
See them together.
Because they're on the opposite sides of the Mercury retrograde. So yeah, that's interesting.
And Mercury is in control of the midheaven this year. So
she's gonna be busy, very busy,
working a lot.
Saturn in the 7th too, maybe a lot of revisions about the kinds of partnerships and people she's doing those projects with.
Yes.
So don't be surprised if you hear again changes in like who she's working with, or like what agency she's with, or which studio she's with. Like those things are going to be in flux, I think, until she figures out who's right for her to do these projects.
She has Jupiter in the 9th house, right? So maybe some things will be coming out. Could also be more travel. I know that she's traveling to Germany to do the Invictus Games with Harry this year. Now, the nice thing, it's funny that the Sun and Venus are in the 12th. Like, we never know what they're doing until like how many days out? Which again, people are like, oh, communications. Like, but again, remember, they're still kind of in a hostile situation with a foreign press and a family. That's very, very powerful. So I understand why they would be behind the scenes a lot quieter than other celebrities, because everything they do, I mean, sometimes Meghan trends and you haven't seen her in weeks.
Yeah.
Her name just trends for no reason.
Yeah.
So I can see why they're very protective.
Real gangsters move in silence, right?
Listen. And for good reason, right? They have to consider security a lot of the times too, right? Anything else in this chart? What do we think about the moon and Venus? I mean, moon and Neptune, I should say.
So just because the moon is her chart ruler, I mean, the moon is always going to say things about her first and foremost. She is very focused on finding those people who are going to support, the things she wants to do. And, because that's her 9th house, people who believe in the things that she believes in. And, Neptune aspects to anything can be very confusing and like dissolving. And maybe you think that you see something that's not quite there. So like, she might still be struggling to articulate, what's important to her, and might make some not like obvious missteps when it comes to, because the moon is also supported since it has triplicity, but there might be some like ambiguity about like whether she's going to pursue a partnership or not, or like what the status of it is, because, maybe she's not fully sure, especially with Mars aggravating the moon by opposition. Like it's really just, there's a strong need to act and do things, but, the moon is not fully sure on, what the scope of the needs are and what the source of the need is and how you can, deal with that. Because I find that the moon and Mars are kind of hungry planets. The moon actually wants to be satiated, whereas Mars is just constantly wanting more, right? So
There's also a little glam there.
yes.
She'll sell out a couple more outfits this year.
Who knows? Maybe she'll do a partnership of some sort.
I was wondering if she'll do a fashion house partnership, or if she'll edit, a magazine, or I don't know, something along those lines. Fashion shoot, something like that.
I know I'm always talking about her doing more food related stuff. And since all this Pisces stuff is ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, I'm like, give us some food, girl. Give us a cookbook, something. Because remember the cookbook she did release with the Grenfell Tower survivors?
Yes.
Did really well.
Did real well.
Real well. Maybe for Hawaii or for some other cause, she can put something together that would probably sell out, right? Fascinating. Anything else?
I do think that they do need to be aware of their relationship just with the Saturn on the descendant.
Opposing the chart ruler, that can be really really tough, because I think this might be a year where Meghan needs a lot more like emotional support. And I think if Harry's really busy, which it seems like from both of their charts, he will be really busy. This is actually making a lot of sense, because you know how like all that stuff is in his 10th, like cleaning stuff out, like it almost seems like in order to like re-strengthen their relationship, like maybe he does step back from some things. So I could see that for sure.
Well, I think in her chart they look okay. I think because Harry would be Jupiter, and she would be Mercury. So at least they're in good standing with each other, but there is still strain going on for sure.
There's a strain, and it's just, it takes some time to like definitely have those moments where you connect with each other, like emotionally. Because you could get really busy and start to get distracted by things, and you might feel that distance from your partner, because Saturn can often bring that kind of distant feeling.
I think we were also talking about the fact that these two have only been married for 5 years. And how much has happened in 5 years, right? They had 2 kids, they've moved several times, they've moved overseas, they've had several legal battles, they've done podcasts and documentaries and released books, and like it's a lot to pack into 5 years. So I personally am not concerned about them doing more promotion or more communications. It's just like, I don't think any of us would be able to keep up at that kind of pace.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think we have to kind of step back and remember that these are humans with a lot of attention on them. And they still have to raise children and have a family and hopefully enjoy their marriage.
It's a lot to put on them. So
and, I think also we have to check in as to why people expect so much from them. I don't know. All right. Who knows, girl? Okay, so the 2 charts together, center wheel is Meghan's natal, and on the outside wheel is what's happening in her solar return chart. So Saturn in Pisces is in the 9th house, along with the moon descendant in Neptune. So television, radio, film, broadcasting, podcasting, promotions, travel, legal affairs, what else? Foreign affairs. That's where a lot of the year is going to have energy circulating around.
It also makes me feel like Harry will be traveling a lot, for sure. She might travel as well, with her chart ruler being in that. ninth house too. So I think they're going to be traveling a lot more.
Mhm, for
Um,
sure.
I love that the ascendant is in the third because it also makes me think that locally they're going to be doing a lot more
Mhm.
Mhm,
in their local area.
But with Mars there, definitely makes me think more of her sibling crap.
mhm,
Definitely, yeah, totally,
Mhm.
100%.
mhm. Maybe some writing too, maybe a
Mhm.
book or some of some sort.
Janelle
Since
says cookbook.
cookbook,
If we say it enough,
cookbook,
they'll do it.
cookbook, or what should we call it? Like home decor, or I just feel like Meghan could easily slot into like a Martha Stewart adjacent for this generation. That's just what I think she could do pretty easily, right? People love her fashion, they love her design, they love her food, like that kind of stuff could just be
Yeah,
easy peasy for her. And Mars is ruling over her fifth and also her 10th.
Mhm.
So there's some creative stuff, maybe some
yeah.
writing,
I mean, it could be
screenwriting.
the new podcast stuff as well, right?
Mhm.
Wherever they're going to house it.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm. I think remember their houses are flipped since Harry's a Cap rising, she's a Cancer rising. So the North Node is actually in her 10th house versus his fourth house, right? So there's definitely this crisscrossing going on.
Yeah, I think she's going to become more public. Maybe not at the beginning of the year, but as we move,
Maybe towards the
especially
end. Yeah.
yeah, especially after we get those the proper sun exaltation eclipse in Aries. I really do think we'll see more of Meghan in 2024, probably.
Mm,
I really do think they're moving because look at that south node in the
South
fourth,
Node
like
coming
Yeah.
for them.
or acquiring new property or changing their relationship to family, even just like I think
Yeah.
that's definitely in the cards,
mhm.
so
Midheaven in the 12th from Gemini, so maybe some behind the scenes production work,
more
possibly
charitable
TV.
stuff
Mhm,
as well.
mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm,
Oh, Jupiter squaring her sun.
okay.
Yeah, the Jupiter in the return is squaring her sun. So it does seem like, if they bought the rights to this movie and like they're going to produce it, that's like an opportunity for her to like show off a new skill set that she has and like also net some cash as well.
Mhm.
Mhm. Venus is retro in that house. Ruling the 11th and the 4th. Hmm. So maybe, like you said, maybe income coming into if they do sell that house.
Or they might buy like more real estate
More
to,
land.
increase their portfolio or what have you. They might not even sell the house necessarily, but
Mhm.
there may be like a reason for them not to be spending as much time there, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Especially if they're both traveling so much.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they'll take the kids with them.
Mhm.
Possibly. I don't know. They're both pretty young. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing really, I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at Meghan's progressions.
Okay.
So while Harry was having a new moon, Meghan is in a full moon phase. Her full moon was a little while ago, but because there's 8 lunar cycles and each cycle is roughly, or 8 lunar phases, I should say, and each phase is roughly 45 degrees. If you divide the 360 degrees into 8, we get about 45 degrees. So each phase for us kind of lasts about 45 months or about 3 years, 9 months, give or take, roughly.
Yeah.
So she had a full moon when the moon was in Pisces still.
Yeah.
Probably about a year ago, give or take.
Yeah.
But now it's in Aries. In fact, this moon is now right on her midheaven, I believe.
It is.
Mhm. So one spouse is in a new moon phase and the other is in a full moon phase. And opposite Saturn. Jesus, Megan.
You can't get away.
Jesus, Megan.
You can't get away.
Saturn.
So I'm very curious as to what's happening with her. Maybe feeling the tension between the responsibility between her career and relationships with family and home and stuff like that. Because having to balance those two parts of herself.
Mhm.
Interesting. Her son is now with Harry's son at 22 Virgo.
It sure is.
And somehow she's still on Mars rising.
Right?
Jeez, girl. Give yourself a break. Like, no, I'm not going to. I'm like, what?
I have things to conquer, girl. You want to put the two charts together?
Yeah, let's look at the overlay.
Okay, give us a second. Actually, let's clear this. And let's do a bi-wheel. Okay, so center wheel is your natal, outside wheel is the progressed chart. So that moon right on top of the midheaven. So definitely a lot of attention about who she is in the public world.
Yeah.
So I think we spoke about her having to redefine that, especially with the moon being with Neptune. Who does she want to work with? Who has those interests, those best interests at heart for her going forward?
Oh, it looks like she might have a Mercury retrograde coming soon by progression. Because you see how far Mercury is from the sun.
Yeah.
That's
so how many degrees away can Mercury get to?
I think
ahead of the
maximum
sun?
29 degrees.
29 degrees. Okay.
Maybe less than that, actually. Yeah, maybe less. But that is coming. I don't know. It might not be next year. It might be like a couple years off, but Mercury is like basically slowing down by progression, which is interesting.
It's interesting too that progressed Mars is coming to her sun.
Yeah.
So Mars being the ruler of her 10th and also her 5th house, in Leo, maybe she's heading into a very creative time where she wants to be known for what she can do.
Yeah.
And what she can create.
And Leo does definitely seem to rule the movie industry if this retrograde is any indication of all the celebrity that's been breaking up.
Yeah, really breaking everyone up.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, I don't know how long it would take for them to get that movie going. If they just bought the rights to the film, like we're not going to see it for at least another 2 to 3 years.
And depends on how the strike goes as well.
Exactly.
So that kind of lines up with that Mars getting to that sun.
It does.
We say give about 2.5 to 3 years.
Almost like a little arrow pointing, ta-da, here it is.
Here it is.
Here's the thing that I created.
What about this progressed midheaven in Chiron?
Yeah, I think the whole stress of her relationship with the media putting more strain on her as a person, I think that's become way more obvious. And like needing to, do that whole third decan Taurus thing of preparing for worst case scenarios, right?
We don't do that.
We totally do that. It's like our job. It's in our DNA. I mean, look at Harry with his third decan moon. He's so hyper vigilant.
Yeah,
so
gotta be, especially after most recently. Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. I think it's weird that people expect them to just be so on and presentable and charming and smiling and just like, where's your husband? Like, why aren't you holding his hand? Also, I was like,
He's like grown. Does he need like someone chaperoning him at all times?
She went to a concert without him. Oh, she's like, they are two.
He's in Japan.
Japan.
I go
He's going without her.
I'm going to a concert without my husband. Are we breaking up now?
No.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we should look at their wedding chart again. I don't know, but I don't
think
know
we
if
could
that's their
take a
fault.
look. We can
Yeah.
take a look at it. Why not?
All right. Let's take a quick peek then. Let's find it. Wedding.
Get to see in real time. What do you guys want to look at? The solar return, the progress chart, what?
Maybe just the progression.
Okay, we can do that. Let's do progressions. Okay. And do one, and then we'll also put them together. Okay, so here's the wedding chart.
Okay. It's refreshing my mind.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We're talking about media, right? And I mean, there's no way they're not going to be in the public eye, right?
Right.
Sun, Mercury, Uranus in the 9th house, and the ruler of these planets being Venus and Gemini in the 10th.
Yeah.
Right? So they're always
They're going to be looked at. Yeah.
Always going to be looked at.
And the moon in Cancer of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And the 11th.
There's also an obsession with them too, I would say, with Pluto opposite that moon. So yeah, I think it kind of tracks.
Sure.
And now Jupiter is there right now by transit.
Yeah.
So there is a lot. So probably by the time Jupiter gets into Gemini, there's going to be even more from them.
That would make sense. Yeah.
And Uranus is sitting on this midheaven now.
Yeah.
Right?
Saturn is hanging out in the 7th as well of this chart, which is interesting. So
there is that strain.
And like responsibility for sure.
And they're only 5 years in, right? So they're in what?
The 6th house year.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, right?
Lots of work.
With the South Node and Mars. Ruled by that Saturn in Capricorn.
They should probably like be offloading projects because it also seems like, you know, maybe they were too ambitious about some things and need to maybe do a little
bit off
less.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's only been 5 years. Like the amount of stuff that they've done and experienced in 5 years, it feels like that should have been happening in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's that Virgo rising, right? They are workhorses to an extent.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. He's a Virgo sun, she's a Virgo Venus. So it's not unheard of for them. They probably enjoy it. They like being productive. That's probably what made them so successful. And envied was the fact that they make the work look easy, but it's still fucking work.
And it does catch up to you at some point.
Yeah.
Take a little break, a little breather.
To enjoy yourselves, but I feel
And
that
their
might be hard to
chart
do.
ruler, the chart ruler of this chart is in Taurus, which is a slow down chart. They should
take it easy. And maybe they would like to, but it's kind of hard to escape when people are constantly looking for you and chasing you and demanding stuff from you. And when you do take a step back, your name is still in people's mouths. Like, you know?
tough.
So I understand why they may not want to respond to things all the time or say anything at all, because it opens up this can of worms.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a peek at their progress chart. Oops. Yes. Moon is, the moon, sorry, the sun is in Gemini on top of her solar return midheaven.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Hmm. Now the moon is in Libra.
Okay. On
On her
on
moon.
her moon.
On her moon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's square to Venus, so that's nice.
Interesting. But now they're in the opening trine.
Yeah, they're in the, what is it? The disseminating phase. No, not disseminating. Gibbous. The gibbous
Mhm.
phase. Yeah.
So the energy is on the upswing, if you can imagine, with these two.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, Lord.
I'm tired for them. Like,
I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
right? So, what the good news is that they've moved out of that square, right? So hopefully within the marriage, they are heading out of that phase of a lot of tension,
Mhm.
right? They probably would have
Yeah.
experienced in probably late Leo into Virgo.
Yeah.
So now in Libra, hopefully things are going to smooth out to an extent.
Mhm.
But for both of them, it's an angular moon, 4th house, 10th house between their natals.
Mhm.
So there's
I
still a
mean,
lot of activity.
look at that moon Venus mutual reception between the moon in Libra and Venus in Cancer. That does feel very nice for the financials
Mm,
of
That's
the
very
marriage.
sweet.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
They have to milk the next like 2 years. So yeah.
Before the moon goes into Scorpio.
Into Scorpio.
Jesus. And who knows, by that time, that might be perfect timing, right? Because the kids are getting older,
Mhm.
right? Because how old is Archie now? 4?
Or she's 4. Yeah.
4.
Lily's
Lily's
2.
2.
Mhm.
So he's going to be heading into like kindergarten, 1st grade. She's probably going to be heading into like preschool, kindergarten, so things are happening. They're parents. They got kids.
Mhm.
And I'm sure they want to enjoy that in addition to working. So, a lot of this is just straight survival. They got a lot of money to make sure that they're safe because security is an issue.
Mhm.
All right. Bi-wheel between the two. Mhm. Yes, we spoke about the moon and Venus. Wonderful. Sun in the 10th. So, they're not going anywhere, guys. Like,
No.
this sun is going to be here for at least another, what,
Mhm.
20 something years before it
Yeah.
moves on.
Mhm.
So,
The visibility does not stop.
mm-mm.
No,
They're a very
it's
visible
there.
couple.
No.
Mhm.
Um,
And that's within his 6th house, her 12th house, Neoli.
Mhm.
mhm.
So yeah, a lot of work,
Mhm.
A lot
a
of
lot of
work.
travel. Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this answers the question in terms of their media strategy, but their whole situation as a married couple does involve a lot of media,
Mhm.
in
And
general.
will for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, the chart ruler is Mercury in the 9th,
Mhm.
right? With Uranus. So there's a lot of unexpected. And then also Mercury is square to Mars. So maybe that's kind of talking about the issues that they've had with the media,
Mhm.
employees who have worked for them or around them. Neptune
Also,
in the
the
7th.
media being necessary for their work, but not always comfortable or enjoyable.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And also what the house of hidden enemies is also in the 9th house, right? So
Yeah.
even some of that contention they have with the press too, legally, right? Neptune in the 7th, right? Not knowing who possibly they can trust all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know, how would one navigate that outside of trial and error and figuring out what works in the moment?
Well, I mean, I think that's why we see in both of their charts that they, like, Harry is going to have to clean out some stuff that's not working, and Meghan's going to have to navigate partnerships very carefully and probably have to suss things out and like trust her gut when it comes to who she works with. So they're both having to deal with what that really looks like and what it means, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about Jupiter and the third? I mean, they're multi-talented too, right? They both have a lot of skills that they can offer and be of service with. So he has military background and charity background. She has charity and acting and media. So there's a lot of really cool things they can do. But
it comes at a
based on
cost.
all this, yes.
Yeah. I need
Still a
everyone
lot.
to just wait for the next great eclipse, like next March. We'll probably see more of them after that. Like, so just hold your hats, people. Hold your hats.
They're coming. They're not going anywhere. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, they're not going anywhere. But I still
This is a
think,
revision period for sure.
yeah, they probably want to figure out how to do it without going crazy and ruining their relationship, because I can't imagine what it would feel like to live this way all the time.
I couldn't do it.
And also, look, that Mercury, the chart ruler, is in the bends. Pretty tight.
Yeah, it's in there.
Pressure,
So
baby.
Everything that they do is up or down.
It's scrutinized. Yep.
Mhm. So, anything else about these two? Any tertiary stuff, or we feel pretty good about this?
Look good, but
I
Jupiter's
feel
also
good.
in the bins too, a little bit off, but it's wide.
It's there.
Jupiter.
Yeah.
So the two communication planets, right, to an extent. And that's what they're known for, right? They used to be praised while they were still in the royal family for the fact that they were so media savvy. You know, so I don't think it's an accident or a failing on their part that they're choosing not to be in the public eye all the fucking time. I think it's a very deliberate choice on their part. To just be like, if it's not a crisis, if it's not important, if it's a lie, we don't need to respond. And people don't need to see us all the damn time.
Yeah.
This is why we left to begin with. Because we wanted to prioritize their mental health.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about these two that we want to talk about?
Got it.
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Camilla's having the best year.
The best year out of everyone.
Camilla's chilling, right? I haven't heard a peep out of them since
the coronation.
Yeah, they're gone. I guess I wonder where they went on summer holiday.
Who knows?
I'm jealous. But I'm sure
We're all jealous.
Yeah.
We all wish we'd had 10 palaces to choose from.
Yeah.
I would love to disappear and go on a nice long holiday. So we'll see come the fall. So we covered, are they the last ones?
Yes.
Yes.
So now what do people want to talk about? The Prince of Wales?
I think we should do the Wales titles.
Okay.
The Wales titles?
Because that may
Okay.
be coming up, because I think they're saying maybe next year an investiture of some kind for William and Kate. And it's not super popular in Wales, so
Of course not.
Unsurprising.
My Welsh ancestors. No.
Yeah, well, the UK, I keep seeing news about Brexit, and people are like, maybe we should get, oh, right, we saw something about the Labour Party. If they were to have an election right now,
Today they win in a
win.
landslide. That's amazing.
So I don't know if we'll do any politics for the UK, but maybe we should, because the royal family, although they're not technically a political family, they are very much involved in the politics of the country.
Right.
They're the figurehead for the whole
They are figureheads.
damn thing.
And also could be dabbling where they should not be dabbling.
Yeah, this is true.
This is true. So, yeah, but other than that, this was fun as always. We'll see what the Sussexes get up to between now and 2024. And yeah, if you guys have any comments or questions or requests, please let us know. We shall be back. And yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mhm.
See ya.